All right, so good morning, everyone. This is the NEXIS Fall 2020 Project Pitchouts. Um, it's been a really interesting semester being the director of NEXIS and seeing how NEXIS could adapt to COVID-19. But we're really proud to bring you our portfolio of projects today. We have about 10 to 12 projects that will be presented on. And just remember when you join and throughout the session, unless you're presenting, please keep your microphone muted. And if you'd like to keep your camera on, that'd be great. So without further ado, we'll kind of get into a background of NEXIS before jumping into the project pitchouts, just to kind of give everyone a reminder of what NEXIS is, and if there's any potential new members in the session here, we can get them going. So what is NEXIS? NEXIS stands for New Explorations in Information Science. NEXIS's mission is enabling students to explore emerging technology by provoking innovation and accelerating learning. NEXIS is a form of experiential learning in the iSchool. We currently have a physical lab located on the third floor of the iSchool, right next to the cancer laboratory. NEXIS has 3 pillars to success as well. It's being curious, being innovative, and being collaborative. It starts off with being curious and thinking about any problem that has a solution using emerging technology. The next step is being innovative, thinking of new solutions and ways to solve problems that are currently in the real world, and then being collaborative as well. NEXIS prides itself in building teams and building long-lasting relationships. I'll hand it off to Ben to talk more about our projects.
Thanks, Sean. So NEXIS currently has 3 different kind of sections of projects, right? We have our individual projects, which is where they're able to kind of individual researchers able to take their project and choose a topic that they're interested in and explore that and potentially create a minimal viable creation, or whether they want to. We also provide support whether they want to then take that on to a business, as Sean's done himself with his prior NEXIS project. And then our other area is we have our team projects, where a lot of our members lie, and this is fantastic. As Sean mentioned, it really allows for that collaborative aspect of NEXIS, and we really enjoy all of our projects, our team projects. We have on this side, we have team exploration, as you'll see on some of these, Team Smart Lab, which is a project that I run. And team exploration is a great intro project for a lot of our members, as it gives a very broad overview of a lot of different kind of emerging technologies and their impact on different industries and where they could potentially go in the future. So that's a great introduction project as well. If anybody out there is interested in joining, we always like that project for our new members, or really any project, truthfully, whatever you're interested in. And I will say that's kind of how these projects come about, is it's really about what the students are interested in, and we kind of want to let students obviously drive and use their own passions to drive themselves forward. And we feel that if students are doing kind of in something they're actually interested in, that's when they're going to get the best result and have the most fun doing it. And that's kind of what it's all about, is learning and collaborating in a fun environment. And then our last kind of section, which is where also a lot of our students are, is our data science project. So this is where, you have a student, maybe a couple students, work on a data set and kind of find different nuances in that data set and explore that in any way. Obviously, there's numerous things you can do with data science and looking at it, whether you want to go machine learning route or whether you just want to explore and visualize it. And we're happy that we actually have people from each of these different sections today that you'll be able to hear about. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And we also have a few potential projects as well that have been sparking interest in NEXIS, such as AI, machine learning, robotics, and then also AR and MR. So we're working hard to get project leads and faculty mentors on those projects. So if any faculty are interested, please reach out to us. But without further ado, we'll start getting into the project pitch outs here. The first one we have is Team Virtual Reality, and I am the project lead for that. So what Team Virtual Reality has been doing this semester is researching the potential of virtual reality and seeing what kind of uses virtual reality has outside of gaming. Virtual reality was kind of created more so for gaming, but it's been adapting to other industries, specifically industries such as healthcare, automotive, and more that are utilizing virtual reality for different uses. So we'll get into it here if my team members want to start giving the presentation. I believe it was Kyle who was going to do the project goals, if you're here, Kyle. If not, I could start them off. So Team Virtual Reality, our project goals were learning about the use of virtual reality in industries such as education, healthcare, and automotive and retail. We are also exploring virtual reality headset hardware and software innovations. So different hardware like HTC Vive, Oculus Go, Oculus Quest, and the Rift as well. We've also been working with these technologies throughout the semesters, and software innovations such as developing tools used to create virtual reality environments, such as Unreal Engine, Unity, and there's a few others as well as Amazon has one as well. So we decided to pick Mozilla A-Frame. So we wanted to learn how to use Mozilla A-Frame, which is a web-based virtual reality tool. On the right-hand side there, you could see kind of how A-Frame works. It's built out of HTML and JavaScript specifically, and you can create lower graphical virtual reality environments, but it's still a pretty good start, and you also get a good coding background, being able to do it in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So the technology we were using was Mozilla A-Frame, Glitch, which is essentially like GitHub on the right-hand side there. It's really good for collaborative coding. And then HTC Vive is the current technology we have in the Nexus lab right now. So I'll hand it off to Jason to give us more about our current progress.
Sure. So right now we've just been, as we said, learning about virtual reality innovations and businesses in different industries. Sean kind of touched on this. We've really been looking at some really cool organizations in automotive, healthcare, and education. We've been gaining an understanding of virtual reality hardware and software such as A-Frame, which Sean just went over, HTC Vive, and Oculus. And we've begun exploring and testing A-Frame and using Glitch to create a minimum viable creation. And it's been really cool getting our hands a little dirty in HTML and JavaScript.
So thank you, Jason. Going forward, what we have planned is we want to take A-Frame and use the A-Frame technology and start building basic environments for future projects, no matter where it goes. We picked A-Frame specifically because A-Frame's built off of HTML web framework, which is really easily accessible for everyone. We've had some issues in the past where people didn't have computers who could run other programs. So I feel that with A-Frame, this would allow a more diverse amount of people to access virtual reality and build environments with us. In addition, we'll be exploring autonomous reality as well as mixed reality hardware. And then from there, we will be taking that knowledge and hopefully hosting some workshops to hopefully educate individuals on the use cases of all of these different virtual reality hardware, in addition to possibly gaining more people in Nexus. So without further ado, let me pass it on to Janak, and he'll tell you a bit more about our roadmap.
So for the long-term goals, we are thinking of paving a roadmap for future Nexus projects who are interested in researching virtual reality, and diversifying the VR projects in Nexus by focusing on certain industries for each project. So basically, like if one project is interested in VR, he can go on that direction, and if another team is interested in AI, they can go in that direction.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So this was Team Virtual Reality. We've been kind of working with COVID-19 and trying to figure out how to make an effective project. So previously we were working with the Bionics and Control Systems Lab based out of the College of Engineering. But unfortunately, due to COVID-19 and certain restrictions, we decided to put that project on hold. But we still wanted to get some kind of research done in terms of virtual reality and where we could possibly take the project once the collaboration starts back up and whatnot. So this semester, we had a pretty good semester learning more about the technical side of things in terms of the hardware and software, and especially playing around with Mozilla A-Frame has been especially fun as well. And learning about virtual reality in different industries, because it's being adopted to many different industries for a variety of different reasons. So thank you for listening to Team Virtual Reality. Does anybody have any questions?
I think Tyler has a question.
Yeah, Tyler.
Hi. I was wondering, this is a really cool project, and I like the way you guys have sort of approached it from this technical perspective. I was wondering if you could expand on your justification for choosing each specific industry that you mentioned in the first part, and then if you plan on expanding the scope and which specifically, which areas of impact you're interested in exploring.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we started off by which ones we were most interested in that virtual reality is being adopted to. So we chose education, healthcare, and automotive based on just pure interest and also looking at the different market for each. So right now, the market is primarily taken up by gaming. However, there are certain aspects of the virtual reality market like healthcare that's right behind it. So we focused on those three just being the most innovative as we've seen as well. So there's one particular company in terms of education where essentially each student in a classroom can have a virtual reality headset. And it's really easy to visualize something, like exploring dinosaur fossils or a historical event. So that's one business that works in education and virtual reality. And it's been especially, prominent right now during COVID-19 because you could have students learn, and see many different things from home. In terms of healthcare, there's a few virtual reality startups focused on a bunch of different things. One of them being surgical training, which is a really big market in terms of virtual reality in the healthcare. Another one being physical rehabilitation and mental rehabilitation as well. So personally, I'm working on a mental rehabilitation company using virtual reality, and there's others as well that use rehabilitation. And then also automotive and retail. Janak specifically was interested in how automotive companies are using virtual reality. So we dug deeper into that and realized that there's different sides of things from both the consumer side and the manufacturing side. So as a consumer, you can tour an entire car without ever leaving your home, especially during COVID-19. And the manufacturing side of things, they are testing different colorways or different components in a car and seeing how they react and work. In terms of new industries we want to look into, there's definitely a few. One of them being military. So I know they currently do military training using virtual reality, but there's other things as well in terms of using virtual reality for militarized purposes. And another industry we've also kind of been looking into for virtual reality is how to use it, for sustainable development. So, things like infrastructure and whatnot. Seeing how infrastructure is playing out, or something like a smart city as well. Virtual reality can be adapted to. But really good question, Tyler. Thank you.
Yeah, we got a couple more up too, Sean. So, Professor Garcia, do you want to go next?
Yes, I wanted to, out of curiosity, I was wondering if you have had a chance to explore the cost of implementing this technology. And I'm very curious within the context of education, because of course it affects us directly. And this is a technology that could be really exciting on the virtual. And so I'm curious as to, how difficult will be to implement it in a school, particularly from the perspective of the cost of the equipment and potentially the programming to do something that could support a class, for example.
Yeah, that's a super great question. So it could be pretty pricey, which is unfortunate. However, in terms of hardware, we'll start off with. Hardware has been significantly reducing in price, especially for untethered headsets where you have no wires attached. So, for example, the Oculus Quest 2, which just released, is one of the lowest price points in terms of hardware for a virtual reality headset, coming in at around $300 for the base model. So the cost per student could be relatively high, especially when you factor in stuff like programming. You have these businesses, they're kind of selling you both, so they'll automatically put their programs in terms of education, they'll put something like historical events that you can immerse yourself in VR or something, like I said, looking at fossils or something like that. So they'll put that on there for a cost, of course, and then they'll ship you out the headset. Per student, it could be estimated around, including the hardware and software side of things, It could be anywhere from around, I'd estimate it at around $500 to $1,000, depending on, what you want to go with in terms of technology. So it can be rather pricey. However, we think that over as time goes on and, there's more technological advancements, the price point for the hardware at least will kind of lower. However, the software kind of might stay around the same rate.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
All right, looks like one more, Sean. Professor Fudge.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. This is great. And my question is, have you explored any augmented reality? Is that actually a different team, or would that be on the same team?
Yeah, great question, Professor Fudge. So in terms, right now we don't have an augmented reality or mixed reality team, but it's something we're actively looking to grow, especially as we scale up Nexus in general. There's been a lot of interest in AR and MR. So the next step for us is kind of assembling a team based on the interest and then getting some hardware and software into the lab. So, Microsoft, there's a lot of different AR innovations now, essentially AR glasses and technology, that you could pull up with your phone that have been releasing. So it's definitely an interest in Nexus. And in the next few semesters, we'll be working on getting, an AR and MR team in the mix.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Do we have any more questions, Ben, or are we good?
I think you're good.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Next off, we have Hitesh Thithani.
Yeah.
Are you here?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Take it away, Hitesh.
Okay. So I'm working on a project which is traffic volume prediction. So basically, the problem statement is that due to the urbanization and the technological advancements, people, like most of the people, have more than one vehicle. So due to that, the roads suggested that there have been people have to travel for their offices, for going out. So there have been a large number of traffic jams, and due to a large number of vehicles, we have the issue with the pollution as well, and there is an issue with the safety as well because of the large number of vehicles on the road. So in order to solve this issue and help the government make some changes and implement some good navigation system, we accurately predict traffic volumes, also predict the traffic volume based on the hourly basis. So we have, suppose we have a holiday, so we can predict in advance if there is going to be a heavy traffic or not based on that. And we can also look at some of the highways which will be which will have more traffic as compared to some which will not be uh, having more traffic. So we can basically make sure that our traffic control is good. So currently I have used the data from UCI dataset, which is an hourly traffic volume data with other features such as temperature, weather conditions, whether it's a holiday or not, and different kind of holidays which are like Thanksgiving, Christmas, Labor Day, etc. So these kind of holidays, and what is the impact of other like weather conditions, which is snow or thunderstorm, and these holidays on the traffic volume that we are going to predict. So currently, the things that have been done are I have cleaned the data, and there was a lot of missing values for the data, so which is being filled, and initial EDA has been done to see the patterns, such as different holidays have different patterns. Different holidays which is there. So based on that, how the traffic volume is changing, and main goal of this project is to implement this whole traffic volume prediction using the deep learning, because in deep learning we can look at the previous things, keep that in mind, and then predict the future. So in basic machine learning, we are not looking at the past data, because of which we will lose a lot of information. But as this is a time series problem, where we need to also look at the previous values, we'll I'll be using majority of the time deep learning method. So I've built a simple neural network, feed-forward network, to predict the traffic flow uh, with around 90% of the accuracy. So I'll be going forward. I'll be making changes to that. I'll be modifying the algorithm. I'll be modifying the parameters to get a better accuracy. So going forward, I'll be building sophisticated time models that do capture the seasonality and cyclicality of the time series data, along with weather and holiday granular uh, traffic prediction. Also, like in deep learning, we have different time series models which are mainly focused on capturing these time series problems, which are like the RNNs, long short-term memory, and the gated recurrent units, which predict the time series data better than any other algorithm. Also, I would like to implement convolutional neural networks, which are doing their job on the visual traffic data that we could see. So we could have a map where we have the visual traffic, and then we can use the convolutional neural networks to train the model on that visual of the traffic, and then predict the future volumes based on this historical data. That will be it. Anyone has any questions?
Yeah, Professor Wallace.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Just excuse me, a quick question. So it looks like you're using RNNs to develop the sequence and forecasting, and then using convolution, the CNNs, to capture the images. And I think those are kind of both relatively strong. But have you thought about how to stitch them together? Will they both be kind of used in sequence to have the application take advantage of both, or kind of neural net technologies, or how are you thinking about kind of assembling all of this?
Yeah, I was like thinking about like how we could use these spatial features, which are the visual things, with the temporal features. So I have looked at a couple of papers that talk about how we can merge these two analysis, where we just do the prediction based on the simple at the prediction which involves using CNN. So I have looked at a few papers. So I'll try to like how we can implement those together. So I'm yet to decide on that. But I have had a few looked at few research papers which talk about combining these two aspects together.
All right, great, nice job.
Yeah, thank you.
Nobody has any other questions. I think, Sean, we're good to move on, and nice job, Adesh.
Could I just ask one follow-up?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to give everybody else a chance, but so as you begin to stitch this together, how do you envision delivering this? Would this be as a managed service of some sort, or what would be, kind of how do you, if you were to ever productize that, how would you envision kind of packaging this so that it would essentially, get delivered as a solution?
I think that we can do some create a web app or something like that, which may give you prediction or something, which is based on both of these things. So I think that I may be able, I'm not sure, but I think we can do something on the web app kind of thing, where we have our someone who could just put in the values, and then he may be able to see what is the traffic prediction that is given based on the uh, spatial as well as the temporal features.
All right, yeah, because I can imagine that many communities already have cameras up and aren't quite sure what to do with them. But if you could have some sort of web service where they could just direct the feed to some sort of API that you built, you could essentially provide a service to them and just process all these feeds that were coming in, and then possibly have community dashboards or like for the city of X and the city of Y. So it's probably a number of ways to kind of put this together to kind of make it a really useful app, and I think it would be enormously valuable.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
All right, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Right. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Sean.
All right, perfect. We had a little technical difficulty, but great presentation, Hitesh. I had a quick question. Are there any cities in particular areas that you were interested in observing first?
As of now, I have not, but like the data set that I'm working is from UCI, so that data set I am looking for the data which is there from the Michigan one of the highways. So there's that data. So like if I am able to do it on that, then we can surely work on other data. Like we can have the data that is collected based on all these few attributes, and there are like for each of the states you will have websites where these data gets posted of the traffic, and then you can just pull that data out, and we can feed that data to this model, and we can build it to like almost all the like any of the state or the highway that you like want to look at.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions? All right. Excellent. Thank you so much, Hitesh.
Yeah. Thank you.
Next up, we have Amia with Team 3D Printing.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amia. I'm the project lead for Team 3D Printing. Alongside me on my team, I have Iris Yang and Liam Atkins. So I'm just going to dive right in. Essentially, our project this semester was a continuation of last year's project. We set out to explore the world of 3D printing, and what started out as a collaborative project between two teams, that being Team Smart Lab, that project really took a life of its own, and we just sort of continued to try to recreate the NEXIS Lab into a 3D model. And now I look at this project as sort of a intro class to 3D printing and whatnot. So our project goals, we first started out researching different types of 3D printers, so FDM, SLA, DLP, and they all work in different ways. Essentially, though, they all use heat to print out 3D objects. So that's sort of the similarity between the three. Like they use different techniques in which they do it, but they all use heat essentially, and different filaments and whatnot. So after we did our research, we did a few test prints with our own printer, just to see, I was showing my team members how it worked. And then thirdly, my team and I, we chose our preferred software to use and to explore. And then I had them choose, which objects in the room that they wanted to design. So started out, I designated myself, I gave myself my own sort of task. I designated the outer walls and structure of the NEXIS Lab to myself. For those who have been in the NEXIS Lab, you know how sort of a crooked structure it is. It's not a complete rectangle, so it was actually quite a challenge, but I'm still working on it. It's still a work in progress. And my software of choice is Autodesk Inventor. Autodesk has a variety of tools, and I think it's more of a sophisticated software. It is slightly hard to use, but I provided the team with LinkedIn Learning website tutorials and whatnot. So there's a ton online that we used in order to figure out how to use these softwares, but I'll have my team members go into the software that they chose and then the objects that they chose to start with. But for me, it was the structure of the NEXIS lab. So I just started out with the outer windows and then the inner wall. That outer structure, firstly, I started out in sketch mode in Autodesk, and then I used an AR tool on my smart device to measure the walls because you know, I don't have that long of a measuring tape, but I was able to use AR to do that. And then once I got those measurements done, I was able to do extrudes and then cuts and then more extrudes and then more sketches. And then that back wall that you see there, I was basically doing constraints on 2 different CAD files. So I made those bubbles and then I constrained the wall. So that's those bubbles that you see are exact. I took a picture of the NEXIS wall and tried to get that exact pattern on there because I wanted the detail. I thought that was important. So that's kind of how I started off. And then I used, again, tons of LinkedIn Learning resources just to get equipped with these tools. I had experience using Autodesk previously just from last semester, and then also in high school I was using it. So it wasn't super difficult, but learning how to do certain things like joins and constraints were kind of hard. And then I just did another, you know, sort of quick monitor looking sort of design. But all of these really are work in progress. None of them are set in stone, and we're definitely going to continue to refine them. But now I'm going to pass the mic to Iris and Liam and have them talk to you guys about their experience with, you know, the software they chose and the objects they chose to design.
Okay, hi, I'm Iris. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, so the software I chose is Tinkercad because as a beginner, I think Tinkercad is more easier for me to use it. And the object I chose is a few cabins. So I designed 3 cabins with different drawers. Yes, and as the pictures in NEXIS about those cabins, so I can measure the height and width of it. And I also tried to create the log on the cabins, but it was a bit larger than I expected. So I just split it to another cabin. So I have like 3 cabins with drawers and 1 cabin with the log right here.
Awesome. Liam?
My design for this was the table that you'd see on the far right. I used Tinkercad for that. I would have preferred Inventor, but just external situations, I had to stick with Tinkercad. So at the start, I did have some inspiration, even though I really didn't set foot in the lab due to COVID restrictions and being outside of Syracuse University. So I of the photos of getting inspiration, I was able to try and recreate the table that was used in a corner for laptops or computers. So that was my original design, and the approach right now is to expand on that, try to refine it a little more to what it looks like to today instead of just that rough demo that you see right there, and then other parts for the bigger picture.
Awesome. Yeah, so, you know, as they both sort of said, you know, this semester was tough, especially not having as much access to the lab. When there was moments when we did have access, we were in there. I tried to host meetings in there every week, but we had 2 shutdowns, so that did take place. But I was able to use AR and photos to share with the group so that you know, they can get the most out of their designs and whatnot. Since we couldn't really be in the lab 24/7, but Moving forward with this project, again, we just plan to refine and print out the current models of furniture and, the external walls and whatnot. Firstly, we'll probably have to determine the scale of the model. Most of our prints right now are drawn to scale, so they're the actual size, but we first have to determine, how big we want this model to actually be. We do that and we finalize everything. We'll probably just continuously try to print, keep the printer up and running, and then once that's all said and done, we'll probably try to add a few things to the print, such as LED lights. We thought of an Alexa Pi, some LCD screens to make the monitors and the model look real. So some things like that. And then, big picture for Team 3D printing, what I really think would be great, and I think the rest of the teammates agree with me, is, having future collaborations with just other teams and then other colleges really outside of the iSchool, such as the School of Architecture or School of Engineering. Recently, I had the opportunity of helping a Whitman student with a capstone project, and it was really interesting for me. I thought that, collaborations like that should continue. I think that 3D printing can really take you to several different industries. 3D printing is just not one industry. You can do 3D printing in the medical industry, engineering industry, architecture industry, like a ton of things, really. So that's pretty much where we're at in regards to our progress. And next semester we'll just continue. Hopefully things will get better so that we're able to occupy that lab space more. But yeah, that's pretty much all we have for 3D printing. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening.
Thank you, Amia. Does anyone have any questions for Team 3D printing?
Hi, I just wanted to say that this is such a cool project, and I kind of love the process that you just described to us, and I think it'd actually be beneficial for our students in the iSchool to learn more about it, maybe through their classes, like talk to some of the instructors in our tech classes and let them know what's happening up here and see if they want to integrate a visit to the lab in their classes, or make the students do an assignment that involves joining up with you guys for a 3D printing project. I just would love to expose as many people as possible to this.
Awesome. Thank you. I honestly agree. I think that just because 3D printing is such a broad topic, it really could be applied to so much. And, as you said, students who have projects, they could just come up to the lab and sort of, ask us, how does 3D printing work? How do we use this? How do we measure? How do we scale? How do we design? Because really, in hindsight, all these softwares, particularly, like, they all work very similarly. So if you know how to use one 3D designing software, you know how to basically use all of them. And that's a skill that you can take with you anywhere. So yeah, I totally agree with that, Sheila. Thank you for that.
Definitely agree with that. Learning, it just doesn't have a classroom. It could apply to anywhere you go. So I do like that comment. I do respect it, and it would be very beneficial if we were to expose that to the outer community.
Yeah, really great point, Sheila, as well. And I think from the logistical side of things, in terms of Nexus, we did, have that Team 3D printing workshop in the spring semester, and it was definitely a hit. And I'm thinking now we could definitely try, regarding kind of seeing how COVID plays out. But if we're not able to be in physical instruction next semester, we can definitely get something virtual going on. We'll have, whether it's a few people in the lab, socially distanced, of course, and then just kind of live streaming, how to work the technology and whatnot. That's definitely something that would, benefit the iSchool community and outside of it as well.
I agree. And just as a follow-up, I don't know if you guys have been over to Makerspace or not, but they have a ton of printers over there as well. So if you need access to more equipment right away, they are willing to partner with everybody. They're a great group to work with.
Great. I've actually been to Makerspace. Makerspace is awesome.
I know.
for this project particularly, we probably will do just that, because the model itself will probably be quite large in scale, and our printer can print but so much in length and width. So we'll probably definitely look into collaborating with Makerspace. Also, I just wanted to mention the big picture for moving forward. There was another project that I had in mind in pursuing. I was able to attend a foundations workshop not too long ago, and I met an alumni there named Justin Batchman. I'm not sure if you guys know exactly who he is, but he currently works at Spectrum News, actually, in Syracuse, and he is a founder of this organization called Different Like You. And they basically had a side project where they printed out prosthetics for children in need and donated those to nonprofits. So I kind of wanted to pursue another project such as that, and sort of see if I can work alongside him. So I'll let you guys know, what how that turns out if I do decide to do that. If it works out at all, just due to COVID and stuff like that. So I also just wanted to mention that's another project that we're looking at pursuing looking forward.
Awesome. Let's get a couple more. Professor Garcia, you want to go next?
Yeah, I was just curious, especially in the last part of your presentation, you talk about how iSchool school students collaborating with other schools will be quite interesting. But I'm, following with that comment, you also indicated that it would be great if iSchool students learn these skills, and I'm curious as to why you found 3D printed attractive within the context of your degree, and how do you see it kind of utilizing these skills after graduation?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, I think just as an IT student in general, I'm a tech enthusiast, really. So, I love technology. I love playing with technology. I think that, if you need something, it could be anything really. You can always just design it yourself and 3D print it. That's a skill that's great just to have. Specifically to my degree, though, I mean, I think I just love to play around with technology, and I think that we can apply this to just so much. The iSchool is very, vast, and there are a lot of concentrations within it. So, I mean, it would be hard to sort of think of exactly what you could, use for used in the iSchool for 3D printing, but there are a ton, I think. But I would have to sort of ponder that more, to be honest.
Thank you, and no problem. Of course, I love the fact that you guys are so enthusiastic around technology, and I personally think that keeping up to date with technology is just wonderful. But I'm just curious as to what you were interested in general and how you thought you could apply. So thank you, Mia.
Thank you, Professor Garcia. And Professor Fudge, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Benjamin. I appreciate it. This was another great pitch, and I like what we're doing here. And I think the future for 3D printing here is where we are right now in 3D printing is sort of where regular printing, was in the 60s. And, I see a future where we're printing all sorts of useful things out. As the technology becomes more prevalent and more commoditized, it will be as something as like, oh, I need this, and you just hit a couple of buttons and then you got it, whatever it is. I think it's a huge advancement in material science, and I think it's something that is worthy to explore now, because there's a lot of hard problems to making it work, and that goes beyond just the engineering of the physical printer. And that's sort of where our school as a wheelhouse comes in, is how can we make it easier for people to do this stuff and make it more approachable for people to do it. Sean said something that I want to just kind of go back and talk about a bit. As the professor that teaches IST 256, and I get students involved in programming, it was always my vision now that I'm involved in Nexus, to build a better synergy between my students and the projects they do, and the work that you're doing in the Nexus lab. And I know COVID sort of put that all on hold for us, but I just wanted to remind everyone that I do want to do something when things get somewhat back to normal. I do want to explore some greater synergies where I have students writing Python programs that maybe make it easier to do 3D printing or use VR, AR, you know, and all these things. There's all ways that you can integrate programming into them and not have to be an engineer to do it. And I think that's the big lesson that I'd like our students to see, is there's a degree of tangibility to programming that exists now that didn't exist way back when I learned it. And that's what actually makes it so exciting, is there's so many ways to write just a little bit of code, and then bam, all of a sudden you have something actually quite significant and interesting. So
yeah, I think that's a really great comment, Professor Fudge, in terms of, you know, getting everyone else interested in active in Nexus. And the one workshop we held for Team 3D printing was definitely a hit. We had around 30 students, 30 students come in, just kind of learning about Team 3D and how to use the 3D printer and whatnot. And also I believe your IoT session was in the same session there too, and it was kind of cool to learn more about that.
yeah, and I remember I did one on Alexa skills, and man, that was like so popular.
Right.
And everybody was asking me all these detailed questions, and I was like, I'm just skimming the surface, showing you how it works and how easy it is to leverage. And I want you to go out and explore it further and things like that. I think we need to really find a way to kickstart the enthusiasm and the minds of our students, because we are really the nexus of a lot of different disciplines, and there's no limit or end to what you can sort of explore with an information focus. I'll just put it that way.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Do we have any more questions for Team 3D printing? All right, great. Thank you so much, Team 3D printing. And now we'll head on to Max Hubley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Max Hubley. I'm a senior dual major with the iSchool and Whitman, and I'm going to present to you my research that I've been doing on creating decentralized apps in the Ethereum blockchain. Okay, so essentially, I'm going to go with a quick overview of what the blockchain is. It was created in 2009 as a decentralized network. And essentially it was utilized for users to safely exchange a small token asset, which is known as the Bitcoin. Some years later, the Ethereum was created, and it essentially further developed the blockchain to be able to perform more complex operations. It allowed for business rules to be embedded within the blockchain, and these rules are known as smart contracts, and smart contracts are performed using the functions and transactions which are within the code. So I've actually was a student in the IST 400 blockchain class here at Syracuse, where we learned the basics of programming a smart contract and how to deploy it on the Ethereum blockchain. But I wanted to further this research by creating decentralized apps on the Ethereum block, be able to interact with and utilize with their Ethereum node that they create, whether it's on MetaMask or GEF. So the first step was brushing up on my Solidity coding skills. I did this using LinkedIn Learning. Essentially what I learned from this was the constructors and modifiers aspects of the Solidity programming language. Constructors define the state variables, and the modifiers create prerequisites for functions to be able to occur. I want to use these in my smart contract, which is essentially me and my partner Skylar had created smart allows doctors to set up opioid prescription information for patients. They weren't like exact prescriptions, but essentially it's documentation that an opioid prescription occurred, with the goal of it being immutable, unchangeable, and it correctly defines and maps the address to the patient. And it also counts the amount of times that the transaction occurs, that a refill happens. This whole goal is to attempt to make more public and address the opioid pandemic that's happening in this country, and also to prevent from fake prescriptions happening so that patients get more opioid prescriptions. So I want to utilize what I've newly learned in Solidity, these new modifiers and constructors to better define my smart contract and make it more usable for the users and less misinformation of data if they were to be deployed on the blockchain and used by other people. So the next step was creating a truffle environment. Truffle is something that I was newly introduced to at the beginning of the semester and have been working on for the past couple of months. Essentially what it is a development environment that works directly with the Ethereum virtual machine, and it allows you to compile and migrate all of your contracts and test it out to see if they have been passing. I've been working on setting this up on my own computer and trying to make them pass. Haven't been successful yet, but I've been working, and this is where I am in my current progress with my research. I also set up MetaMask. MetaMask is essentially interacts with the Ethereum blockchain, which by creating an address for you, it acts as a wallet essentially, and is crucial for the end part of the testing for the decentralized app. So my next steps are for this project is tweaking my code a little bit, adding the constructors and modifiers that I want, and also I want to create a user-friendly interface using HTML for the decentralized web app that I want to create. Once this is created, I want to use Web3 JavaScript, which is a API that allows for HTTP websites to interact with the Ethereum blockchain. And once I have this set up and I've created the proper final product that I want, I will then download Geth, which is essentially more of it's like MetaMask, but instead of just giving you a address, it essentially downloads the entire Ethereum blockchain onto your device and creates an Ethereum node that you configure yourself. So once this is deployed, essentially anyone would be able to utilize the product that I've created on the Ethereum blockchain. So that's what I've had to present. If there are any questions, I'll open the floor.
Max, I have a quick question.
Yep.
So going back in terms of the prescription technology you were using there, was that actually deployed or was it just kind of a mock-up?
So in class we created that and we deployed it on essentially a Geth server, but it wasn't the actual Ethereum blockchain. We used because the iSchool had Geth downloaded on their virtual network, and we utilized that by it was a Geth. It wasn't a real Ethereum blockchain. It was a private blockchain network, so it wasn't like the public one. So it was a private blockchain.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And a quick follow-up question with that, just on a conceptual level, working with the technology and using it for something like opioid prescriptions, in terms of both the ethical side of things and the security side of things, is there anything do you feel like this technology is safe using it for something as serious as that, or does it still have a little bit to go?
So essentially what I've been doing is kind of a mock-up and trying to make sure that the smart contract is holding up. But when it comes to the actual Ethereum blockchain itself, that will hold up true and true, because one of the main uses of Ethereum is its immutability. So once something is on the blockchain, I'm sure some of you have heard this before, it's there forever until it's changed. So using this is why I wanted to use this type of technology for this issue, because you can't go back and alter these prescriptions on that once they're on the blockchain, and you know who the people are once it's on there. So I wanted to kind of further create it so that way there's one block per each patient, and I'm not sure if this is if the final product would eventually be on a public chain. It might kind of break off once Ethereum kind of starts further developing its protocols and starts being used in more industries. But to basically answer your question, I think that especially in the healthcare industry and pretty much in any serious industry, the underlying code and networking configuration of the blockchain is perfect for this type of issue.
Got it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Stephen?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. In terms of the application you're talking about, so have you thought about how do you get the transactions into the database? So would someone that's a pharmacist or with the primary care person, whoever prescribed it, put it into their kind of local electronic medical record system and then rekey it in, or would you try to interface somehow? So as these prescriptions are generated, they automatically flow in? Because it seems like one of the challenges you're going to have is keeping the kind of the core electronic medical record systems that are used by the providers and then the blockchain in kind of in sync.
Right. Yeah. So I kind of wanted it to be its own separate thing, because I feel like personally opioid should be a stronger issue. And I think if I were to start really going forward with this project and trying to implement this technology into the real world, it would first start with nonprofit organizations that are trying to fight this epidemic that we're facing in our country. And essentially it would be two separate things, because I think mixing up with a person's medical records would get too complicated, especially with already the setup centralized healthcare networks that we have in place. So I kind of wanted to create its own separate thing that doctors would be required to fill out. So not be too complicated, just fill in a few variables and then have it there, so that way if it's an opioid prescription, then they have to maybe do some extra steps and be accountable for the prescriptions that they're giving. Because there's plenty of cases where people have or doctors have overprescribed patients opioids because they're trying to fill prescriptions. And it's just, I feel very strongly on this issue, and I think that something separate and if people come behind together with it, it can solve this issue.
So that makes sense. And just a quick follow-up then. So it kind of in doing it that way, I agree with your idea of keeping it separate, and then it'll actually scale across all kinds of any number of different health systems, medical record system. But one of the challenges that healthcare providers have, or that kind of the healthcare interoperability these days, is identifying the patients on who they are. So I might have one medical record number, one ID number in, when I go to my primary care doc, but then if I go to a specialist, they use a different system and I have a whole different number. So have you thought about anything around patients' identification so that you can at least tie it back to the fact that that's Steve Wallace and not another Steve Wallace that lives in a different place, or how to deconflict those kinds of things?
Right. So once you're on the network, so that's what I'm gonna actually try to be working with is the identification, and that is more specifically what I recently learned in Solidity is I wanted to create the ability so each person or each account that's on the Ethereum network is given an address, and this address is not changed. It's immutable. And if you look really closely on the picture on the screen, in the truffle environment, the accounts, so those are all addresses. And when you're using the truffle environment, when you're creating your contract, you plug those in because they're essentially that numbers that were created, hexadecimal numbers that were created for it. So in reality, in the Ethereum blockchain, each person who creates a node that's on the blockchain gets one of these numbers. So, and as you can see, I mean, there's the possibility of having just billions and billions of different individuals. So being able to tag that number to a specific person for each account or each patient that's created, I think would solve that issue. But also to what you were saying, it would need to be updated in the separate medical records, since this will be separate. So that is a good point that you brought up, and I haven't thought about that.
So one thing that might help you there, because we have this problem even in the Syracuse community between the different healthcare providers, and a couple of thoughts. Number one, there's organizations now that exist that are called regional health information exchanges. And so these are third-party, usually nonprofit organizations, and they provide a set of services that are called Master Patient Index. And essentially what they do is it's a big giant lookup table, but it's maintained in a curated way, so that if I'm 1, 2, 3 over in system A and ABC over in a different system, and I'll probably have lots of different medical record numbers, they maintain those relationships. So one of the things you could do is, if you were looking to put this into, say, a community, you could look for you could partner potentially with some of the, the health information exchange providers in those communities, and that way you'd have a tether back. Because I think if you've got a master account ID, that's fine. That becomes at the top of the tree. But then you've got to be able to say, well, okay, Steve, whatever this hex code is right here, he ties out to 1 through 3 over in this system and ABC over in this system. And if you can find a way to do that, it would actually get to be enormously helpful, because we can then actually confirm the fact that I am in fact the one, it's me. Because otherwise I could just run around to all these different pharmacies or all these different go doctor shopping, and it might not show up on radar. So that's just another thought, either with some sort of master patient index of your own, which there's software to do it, or to tie in with a regional health information exchange, might help you when you go to actually try to implement this.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Max, there's one more question in chat. And Hanto's wondering, Hanto, hope you're doing well as well. Good to see you in here. So when you go to deploy your app on Gith, are you planning to deploy it on an online server that's accessible to anybody, or are you going to deploy it locally, that only local users or yourself will have access to?
I think it would be a process. So I think when I get to this part in my project, I'm going to try to utilize the technology that's at the iSchool and put it on a private Ethereum network, kind of just to test out some more. But basically the way that Geth essentially connects to the Ethereum blockchain. So unless there are other ways, like using MetaMask, and specifically MetaMask is a really good example. You don't have to create an entire node on your computer. It actually takes up a lot of space, and it's pretty difficult, because the nodes are also essentially supposed to be capable of mining processes. This might change in the future when Ethereum changes to proof of stake, but for now, you would be able to use it and access it if it was deployed on the Ethereum blockchain using a MetaMask or another plugin that connects to the blockchain without creating a whole node that is a part of the network, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Max. Great project. Really, a really cool concept. And I think you tackle trying to tackle some major issues, as you mentioned, in the U.S. and obviously with
Thank you.
with all those issues around the opioid pandemic. So I think at this point, we're going to take kind of a little 15-minute break and reconvene at 12:30. And we'll be really excited to kind of get you the second half at 12:30.
Yep, we got about 6 projects left, so we'll be right back at it 12:30. All right, hopefully everyone's trickling back in here. But we'll resume our project pitch outs. We have about 6 left. And then after that, the session will probably estimate around 2 p.m. It'll end 1:30, 2 p.m. But without further ado, we will start off with Team HCI with Yan Yu.
Hi everyone, my name is Yan Yu from the School Engineering and Computer Science, and I'm the leader of the HCI team. As we all know, HCI, the human and computer interaction, is the study of how people interact with computer. As its name implies, HCI consists for 3 parts: the user, the computer itself, and the ways they work together. In the project, we want to provide users with a more concise and convenient website experience, increase the utilization rates for the website, and intentionally increase the retention rate of user. Rather than closing the page at a glance, for this semester, we're recruiting several new members, and some of our old friends graduated early this spring, so that I began to think about balancing the differences between the academic background for different team members. Therefore, we mainly start the user data in Google Analytics, detected web vulnerability, and the details using the tool Wave, and then redesign the web page structures. I can't wait to let our team members share their experience and thoughts about the HCI project. So let our team member make the introduction for our team HCI. Is Shananda here? So maybe we can let Renju to introduce our progress right now.
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Renju. I'm second year graduate student from iSchool. So I have been working with the HCI team from last semester. So from last semester, we introduced the concepts of Google Analytics to review the web users, how they use the website, especially the NEXIS website through Google Analytics. And as well as we use the tool called Wave. So it could point out which were the defects, not the defects, but which were some of the errors in our website or which can be improved. So we use the concept of the Wave, and through using Wave and Google Analytics, we have formed some of the prototype for the improvised website, and we would be adding some more few addition to our websites according to the correction through the Waves and the Google Analytics. And as coming from the previous semester, this semester has been a good start with introducing one more tool type, WordPress, which is a great tool to create new prototypes for our websites. And we would be working on WordPress and XD to improvise our NEXIS website and its other sub website like the project and the introduction for the next semester. So my next team member would be detailing you about the prototype, which they have added in the poster.
Hi, hello, I'm Iris, and I'll be introducing the prototype. So we used Wave, which will analyze the errors in our website. So we eliminate some of the original NEXIS website. For example, we just only use one picture for the main homepage, and then we still will be using the mentality and some project process in the homepage, but mostly we just eliminate some more the color and just make it make it more simple. And now we just only use this improvement. I used the Wix to eliminate some of the arrows. So that's really it, and I will hand it to Liam to introduce the improvement we've made.
Hello, my name is Liam, for those who may not know already. So we're going to continue working on making sure that 90 to 99% of those who ever come across our website will feel comfortable and will find themselves in a position where they're able to access enough information to see what we're all about without on our hand giving too much away. It's not only about making the user comfortable, but it's also making sure everything's secure and everything's straightforward. So with the use of Google Analytics, Adobe, and Wave, as well as WordPress, I'm sure that by the end of next semester, we will come up with a new and improved version of our page, as well as all the other pages that follow through. And else, or mostly everybody else, would respect the finished product.
Okay, so is there any questions?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any specific part of the website that you felt definitely needs to be improved the most?
I think it's the top page of the website, because we mainly investigate on the website the About Us page, which can be shown on the prototype.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when the user opened our website, they were not able, they were not seems to scroll down to see the details of our page, like our progress, like how to set up a program, how to set up a project. Because I have a survey last semester with the friends around me, in order to ask how long do they would like to stay on our page. And when they open the NEXIS website, they actually think that the pictures is the only thing occurs on the website. They will not scroll down.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Team HCI. And we'll be moving on next to Reed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Reed Jaworski. I'm a first-year graduate in the MLIS program. I'd like to start by generally introducing MIND. MIND is a program that operates as a recommendation system informed by biofeedback data, or EEG data in particular. With this data, the program acquires songs from the Spotify web API and curates music based on the user's current mood. Before we get too far into the mechanisms, a couple definitions need to be established. On the left side, you'll see the definition for EEG. For those of you who don't know, EEG stands for electroencephalography, and an EEG device detects audio signatures of brainwave activity. For this project in particular, I focused on beta waves and alpha waves. Each of these waves, among others such as delta, theta, and gamma, have unique frequency ranges. But for the purpose of this presentation, you needn't worry too much about their quantitative properties, so much as the fact that they have qualities of mind that are often associated with them. For instance, beta is associated with wakefulness, and activity, whereas alpha is often indicating a meditative state. With these definitions out of the way, let me introduce the question that inspired this project. I asked myself, can EEG data and audio data be used in such a way that when analyzed relative to one another, a program can be recommended, or a program can recommend music based on a user's mood? In other words, can we use EEG data and audio data to suggest music to users based on how they're feeling or approximately feeling in the moment? So how is this possible? With general answer to this would sound something like a Python program retrieving audio data from the Spotify web API. And I noticed in earlier presentations, some of us were also using APIs. And it takes that data from the web API and compares it to the user's EEG data. This comparison assorts commonalities shared by the user's mood and a given set of songs. Obviously, there's only so much we can cover in this presentation, but I want to introduce a couple more key concepts that build upon that answer and help illustrate how mind works. The first idea I'd like to introduce to you is the use of an arousal valence map. The arousal valence map, it's to the right portion of your screen. It's basically a map that's an effective method of approximating emotion based on two dimensions of analysis. Arousal being how active or energetic someone is, and valence being the degree to which they are feeling positive or negative. What's interesting about the arousal valence map is that it assigns key emotions into 4 quadrants, each with their own unique arousal to valence relationship. For instance, on the right-hand side of the map, we see happiness and calmness. Both share positive valence, but are differentiated by their levels of arousal or activity. That is to say, when you're feeling positive and have high activity levels, you are most likely happy, and if you're feeling positive but exhibit less activity, you're most likely calm. And the same goes for negative. High activity, negative valence means anger, low activity, and negative valence, chances are you're feeling sad. Now that we have a means of assigning emotion for this project, we can take the user data as well as the audio data and assign them to their respective mood quadrant. From there, the program can seek out the songs most similar to the user data based on the arousal valence map. The closer in proximity the songs are to a user's mood quadrant, the more likely those songs will be recommended, and the more distal, the less likely they will be recommended. On the right-hand side of the slide, I've included a rough rendering of what the program interface could look like for a user if they were to use it today. It's worth noting that the results in this display are actually from a test that I ran myself, one of many. With the EEG device equipped, the user can select the artist or playlist they like to listen to. For this example, I chose the Grateful Dead, for any Deadheads out there. Next, the user can identify positive, negative, or neutral. And if questions come up about user input, I can expand upon that later. But in this instance, I chose positive. And now that the two fields are acquired, the program can calibrate the song selection based on inbound EEG data. The list of songs below are actual recommendations that the program gave me. And if anyone knows the Grateful Dead, they would know that these songs are upbeat, positive songs that perfectly fit the mood I was in. On a final note, I'd like to mention that there is a wave of new commercial-grade EEG devices that make technologies like this possible and highly accessible to tinkers like me who are only just starting to get into it. In the future, a program like Mind may be accompanied by in-ear EEG devices that fit on the edge of your earbuds, something that I haven't truly seen be crafted yet. The uses of EEG data and recommendation systems, while pondered upon and exercised in a couple of instances, has yet to truly be used in its fullest potential. Thanks for listening to my presentation and looking at my project with an open mind.
Yeah, thank you, Reed. Do we have any questions?
Oh, looks like Tyler has a question.
Yeah, Tyler.
Hi, Reed. This is awesome. Super, super cool. I really like the way it's done here. I guess my question is sort of in regard to the sort of classification that you used in figuring out where specific songs fit in best. Did you use any type of semantic analysis to kind of sort the different genres, or did you use like key indicators to, I guess, classify how a specific music fit in or could be indicated by a specific EEG? If you could elaborate on it, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So a lot of this was enabled by the Spotify Web API in particular. And the reason why I was using the Spotify Web API for this instance of a recommendation system for EEGs is because the data that they include is often often establishes key data points that would be relevant to an arousal valence map. So they have a data entry field that falls under valence itself, or energy, or keys, which in music you can associate in certain cultures and contexts, positive keys with positive valence, negative keys with negative valence. So some of it comes down to actually being aware of qualities of music and knowing how that charts out onto a map, but also the accessibility of the Spotify Web API in particular. I'd like to mention, though, that a program such as this, serving as a template that it is, isn't necessarily always dependent on the Spotify Web API in particular. You could craft your own way of audio analytics and derive means of mapping it from there. But the Spotify, a more direct answer to your question, the Spotify Web API provides classification methods within it that they've used their own audio analytic techniques. And from there are numeric values or quantitative values that I can use to draw an equivalence with the EEG data.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. That makes a lot more sense. And I was wondering if you think this project could scale to other types of audio formats, because specifically how I see this is that as you're classifying the information, you're kind of expanding towards, getting music into the hands of people, but also I envision this kind of going into like, audio recordings or like larger repositories of audio information from larger organizations like LOC, for example. Do you see any sort of potential for using other types of collection APIs or looking at other types of audio repositories?
Oh, absolutely. It can go in any direction. It can scale and to any degree. I'll like to stress that for the purpose of this project and this presentation, it was to put the rubber to the road and see, one, if it's operable in this early stage, and to find more iterative forms later on. So if you have any ideas in particular, if you'd like to talk about it at another time, I'd be more than glad to have that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. This is great.
Of course.
Yeah, Reed, I have a quick question. I mean, what kind of intrigued you to start working specifically, with this technology and this specific idea in general?
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly how I encountered it, but I mentioned it in the presentation. The fact that EEG devices are becoming incredibly user-friendly and accessible to the layperson. So I had acquired one myself and started fooling around with it. And it was upon acquiring the Muse 2 device. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Muse at all, but I discovered that they have a vibrant online community, and a lot of their work is open source, and it's again, it's vibrant, and a lot of people are hands-on or trying to adapt it to their personal needs. So it started there, but over time, with COVID, I had nothing else to do but think and chat with friends, and one of the things we were talking about is just our obsession with recommendation systems and how either sometimes they're amazing or other times they're just completely inaccurate. So I challenge all of you to step back and turn off your Google recommendation systems and watch what happens to your YouTube feed from now on, and see what that looks like. So again, if you were to think about it in terms of recommending, this sort of recommendation allows the user to be provided suggestions based on that moment alone, whereas previous examples of recommendation systems function on past activity. So that could lead to questions of ethics and privacy and such. But yeah, so that's a long, nebulous answer to your question, but thank you.
No, yeah, this is great. And I remember you running through this with Ben and I in your NEXIS interview, and we were totally intrigued, and I'm glad to see it's come along.
Cool, thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah, this Professor Wallace, I've got one. So Reed, this is really cool. Maybe more of a technical question, but I actually got a little intrigued by this myself earlier in the year, and I actually bought one of these devices from one of the competitors of Motive.
Yeah.
So I hooked it all up, and you could really see the and basically just had some sort of small little web service engine running, and you could actually see all of the different frequencies streaming out. But I kind of got stuck there. So I'm really fascinated by this. Now, so how do you go about mapping the and I apologize, I was a little bit late, so maybe you covered this, but go about mapping the frequencies of the different waves into the arousal and the valence values?
Yeah, so there's a decent amount of research that goes into charting EEG data onto the arousal valence plane. It's not entirely by my design, but it is inspired by numerous academic institutions that have done research into arousal data from EEGs. So basically comparing beta waves and alpha waves in terms of one representing activity and one not representing inactivity, but a lower grade of activity or closer to a meditative state, like I've said. So if you look at those two states proportional to each other, you can gauge whether or not an individual is active or closer to inactive. However, it's worth noting that obviously when you get into EEGs and reading EEG scans, you learn that everything's relative. There's no absolute point. It's not a definite reading. So you do need some sort of comparison technique. And it could depend on the user over time, or it can depend on averaging out users and seeing what average arousal rates are based on that sort of formula.
All right, great. Yeah, so I imagine you could, because I remember that with the motive, you could actually set up for different people. And then I guess if you could, in terms of building the classification, or at least building that range of what the frequency would be, you could kind of have some sort of interface and say, how are you feeling right now? And map that back to the wave, so you at least got a relative scale. And then once you have that relative scale, you're just looking, what I understand you saying is you're looking at the overall frequency, high on arousal and low, and then with the alpha and the beta, and then based on that you can then classify them onto this arousal scale that you're talking about here, and from there you can then feed that into your recommendation engine.
Absolutely, you got it spot on.
All right, that's really cool. Nice job.
Thank you.
Great. Any more questions? All right, cool. Thank you so much, Reed. Really cool project.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Rohan.
Hi, Sean, am I audible?
Yep, you're here.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was like in another meeting, so I had to leave that. Okay, so should I start?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, hello everyone, my name is Rohan. I am a first year grad student in the IM program in the iSchool. I finished my master's in applied data science earlier this year in May. And this is my second master's degree and my third year in the iSchool. And it's my first year at NEXIS. So this is my topic for the pitch out. What I'm doing is an employee attrition analysis. What I'm planning on doing is that I'm studying employee behavior as to why employees quit their jobs. We know for a fact that let's say in a global pandemic, let's say in COVID-19, employees are getting laid off. But at the same time, what we see on LinkedIn is that some people at the same time are changing their jobs. So why are they doing that? That's the purpose on why I chose this topic. So the data set I'll be using is the data set I am currently using is a data set I found in Kaggle. It's made by a few engineers from IBM, where there's employee demographic data and some details on their job, what level they are, how many years they've been working. So, and whether or not they have left their jobs or not. So mainly we know that organizations, especially in an external environment, organizations themselves have changed. We know for a fact that universities take Zoom, lectures on Zoom now, or we know that because of COVID-19, everything is turned into remote and work from home. So that's so in that case, how culture changing? How are employees finding their organizations? That's the reason why I chose to do this project. So the significance of this project is to like blend in with HR analytics and use with machine learning algorithms. My plan is to like use, I'm going to be using, I have coded this project in Python using Jupyter Notebook, and the packages I've used are scikit-learn, and I'm planning on using some classification algorithms. So I'm planning on like combining employee behavior with machine learning to see like what other factors are used when employees want to like quit their jobs. Like, is it just because they have a low pay? Is it because they don't get a promotion? So those are like some factors I'm looking into. Yeah, I wanted to just go on to the next slide. So this is my current work that I've done. I've done some exploratory data analysis. So the first diagram, like which is on the left, it's a feature correlation. These are basically like my numerical features in my data set. I made a heat map which shows like a correlation matrix. So the lighter colors show that which factors and which variables are more correlated with each other. And the ones that are like in a darker shade are the ones that are not that correlated. So this gives us like an idea of like what features are affecting an attrition. So if we can see like in the topmost feature on the left, like on the vertical side, we can see the attrition numerical column. So basically that's the column that I'd converted into a numerical factor. And that shows like the line after that shows like which other variables are like getting correlated to that, which explains why like the lightest one is like at the last, like at the right side, because like the scatter plot, like the heat map shows it shows it in a 4-way system. So that's why like it shows that one is correlated, like attrition numerical is most correlated to attrition numerical. So on the right side, I also saw like what kind of what kind of employees we're looking at. So this shows like the job level and the number of years they worked, and it kind of makes sense because the higher the position of the employee, the more years they worked. So we can see like employees who have worked for more years tend to be on a higher job level. So this data set actually shows, so the main part of this data set is that they also show like what other departments they're from. So, but from this data set, we can also see that employees are getting their promotions. But at the same time, we can see that some of the employees who have still worked for a long time still are on a relatively lower level. Like it's not a linear graph. So this is my current work. This is what I had visualized for now. My next steps is going to be using machine learning models and to let's say I'm going to be using logistic regression and random forest for now, but based on like my accuracy, whichever I get, I'm planning on using more models. So, and the other step that I'm planning on doing is that once I run these models, I'm going to optimize them by using my categorical features. So my models will work on only numerical features. So, and there are a few categorical columns as well. So what I'm planning on doing is that I'm planning on feature engineering those new variables, probably like find out some more insights and make my models more accurate. Just find out like, and then after I use like my models, I'll determine which my best model is. And then based on that, I could like gain a feature importance and see what exactly is making employees quit. So that's all I have. And thank you so much. If anyone has any questions and feedback, I'm willing to like take them.
Great project. Any questions?
So Ron, yeah, Professor Wells. This is yeah, hi. This is actually really neat. I actually I'm glad you found the IBM data set. I've used it a few times in various projects, and it's actually pretty good. And so in essence, this is a churn model, if I understand it properly. So you're looking for employee churn the same way as you might with kind of whether customer churns out of a subscription service. Is that kind of your thinking right now?
Yeah.
Yep. So so I think the machine learning model or the data set is really good, and I think the most of the classification algorithms you mentioned should work well as would others. But have you thought at all about how, if you want to scale this out to say other data sets or other kind of industrial applications, what kind of data? Where would you get this data if you were to kind of your first job out as a consultant or something like that, how would you acquire this data from a company? Have you thought about that at all?
So I actually have, because like this data set was like a data set made by engineers for this project. So the thing is that we could either have like a like an employee survey, and let's say like if it's anonymous, or let's say if we could scrape data from like relevant data which correlates to these features from Glassdoor or LinkedIn when it comes to job recommendations, like job reviews. We could gather this kind of data manually. It might be like a really cumbersome process, but once we gather that, we could probably use these trained models on that unseen data to see how accurate like those models work, and whether our model would like just work for this data set or for other like employee data.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that would
Yeah.
probably work. I mean, kind of building on that, most companies, when people leave, will do some sort of exit interview. And from what I've seen, those are all over the board. So, you know, if you wanted to consider commercializing this somehow, if you could come up with a standard set of, you know, questions or at least data that they would need for each exit interview, individual companies could then make sure that they have this. And then you could essentially build up a training set by company. And then they would have whatever features and attributes they would be interested in. But it seems like it might, it could be productized and might scale out pretty well if you could, you know, kind of per company, if you could work with them to interactively determine what attributes are important to them or all the attributes they collect. And if not, have them start collecting these attributes. And then all you'd really need is a file, and then you could. So the other thing you might want to think through is once you've built your churn model in terms of the presentation, you know, certainly you can build some dashboards and things like that. But if you could kind of backfeed it into kind of a recommender system of some sort, so that you could look and see, someone could say, you know, understand the attributes and the relationships. It might be actually helpful for turning this, making this individual companies.
Yeah, another idea like I also had is that, so I'm not sure how I would go on with it, but let's say that we take an employee and just predict like in how many years is this employee more likely to like leave this job. Like this could also be like some data that companies could use. Like if they know, like, you know, maybe if some certain employees might leave their job after a few years, like they might have to kickstart that hiring process a little bit in advance. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. Not only that, but you could risk score all your employees, and so they could do certain interventions before they leave. Some of the same way that a telecoms company, if they see your volumes drop off for certain behaviors, they send you a promotion of some sort to try to kind of get you re-engaged. So that would be really cool, is to kind of have a kind of a attrition risk scoring model that you had for companies, and that might be actually really valuable to them.
yeah, thank you so much, Professor.
Good question. I have a quick question. So I remember reading a little bit back that one of these models included race in it, and I was interested. You know, it doesn't seem like this one does, but are there any other kind of ethical issues regarding that? You know, in something analyzing something like this?
So maybe like looking at like age or education, like maybe I mean, if like sometimes like now employees, like even when it comes to recruiting, they always want someone even experienced for something like an entry-level job. So I could also like see something like when it comes to the age variable, I could see that like just how are younger employees being treated as compared to their older employees. Like, are they getting paid more or are they getting paid less? Or are they being, because they're younger employees, are they being taken advantage of? Or are they actually being considered as an asset for like in the long run? I could definitely look into that, and maybe something into education, because some like, let's say like if an employee with a college degree is more likely to get paid than someone with a high school diploma, which is kind of, it does make sense. Or like we could say if someone with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, so like how much bias is done in that. So we could definitely see that, especially in the age variable.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. Any more questions?
Just to comment on that, I think it's an excellent question. I think, you know, certainly the one thing you want to make sure is that all the data is de-identified, so there's no personally identifiable information that's in there. And then sometimes if the data sets are small, and so someone could potentially reverse engineer, you could bin your data. So you could say, you know, instead of saying age 63 x 64, you could say, you know, kind of 60 to 65 and 50 to 55 or something like that. And you could also potentially do that with race, so that it's not just one race, but it's a collection of different ethnic categories. And I think that would protect you to a large extent.
Yeah, really good explanation. Thank you. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sean.
Yep, good project. All right, next up we have Martin with Team Exploration.
Hey Sean, how are you?
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
Pretty good.
Yeah, so I'm the project lead for exploration this semester. So team exploration, we're using different types of technologies to explore, see their use cases, and then, you know, hopefully solve some real world problems later on. I'm currently a senior in the iSchool, but after that, pursuing my master's as well in IM. So basically, project exploration. We focus on one topic each week, and from there we, you know, see some of the, again, like I said, the use cases, some of the pros and cons, and just see how capable and how these technologies are being used and leveraged on a daily basis. So basically, emerging technologies is the end goal, seeing what they do, etc. Excuse me. So this semester, we went over some data journalism, blockchain, IoT, and smart buildings and cybersecurity. In terms of cybersecurity, I did a current event with the team highlighting some election interference from 2016 and 2020, given that it was election year. So we went over some of the strategies foreign actors are using, whether it's from a cybersecurity standpoint to a international relations standpoint. Given that our president fired the cybersecurity infrastructure agency director the other day, I felt like it was kind of relevant. So yeah, that was interesting. Also, me and my team, we went over smart buildings slash IoT, which is very similar concept. So how a building is all synced across different whether it's the lighting, the HVAC, to the door system, to unlocking them, etc. I've in my previous experience professionally, it's a new trend that companies and major organizations are willing to pay top dollar to have their building economically friendly, as well as just work on its own. Essentially, it's definitely very interesting. In the future, we have a couple of students with data visualization expertise. So maybe playing around with data sets that we could find online, seeing what we could do with them with R, Python, whatever it may be. I know Smart Lab has, we were planning to use R or Python to look at some graphs with the density dashboard. So maybe piggybacking off them a little bit there. And then looking at cloud computing, AI, and some of the pros and cons there, and different service models with cloud computing, how students could use software infrastructure, whatever it may be, to either store photos or access and pull down VMs and server space. Yep, so that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Martin. Any questions?
I just wanted to highlight we're a pretty big team, so I wasn't able to include the names. I believe I think Jill and a few others may be still here. We all work together on this project.
Cool. I have a quick question, and definitely all the team members feel free to jump in. Is there a specific area that you're personally interested in the most, Martin?
Not really. I guess given my the various degrees I'm pursuing, it's very well versed and broad range. I guess the IoT cybersecurity realm is very interesting, in how these devices can easily be tapped in. So from that standpoint, exploring maybe what's going on there, some of the technological concepts going on there would be very interesting for sure.
Cool. Anybody else from the team, feel free to hop in and let me know. Or if not, if we have any more questions. All right, cool. Thanks, Martin, Team Exploration.
Thank you.
Next up, we will move to Team Smart Lab with Ben.
Hello, I'm Leah Dreilinger, and I'll be introducing Smart Lab today. So I want to get everyone here excited for IoT technology before I pass it on to Ben to talk more specifics as to what Smart Lab is doing. Every second, 127 new IoT devices are added to the internet. Just think about that. That is a huge number. And by 2025, it is predicted that there will be 75 billion IoT devices connected to the internet. That is about 10 IoT devices per person on the planet. Moreover, though, by 2023, companies will be investing up to $1.1 trillion in the IoT market. So for all of us graduating before 2023, that means there will be a lot of openings in this market for jobs after graduation. So IoT refers to a broad range of interconnected devices that are capable of communicating with other devices and other networks. Typically, IoT is used to gather information and perform specific actions. While many of them have the ability to process data, some are only intended to just gather and transmit data elsewhere for processing. IoTs are very crucial for automation strategies. Automation runs only as smoothly as the quality of the data collected. It can also be used to control a variety of tasks and functions remotely. This helps securing IoT accessible pretty much anywhere across the globe. The most exciting part of the IoT innovation is taking place in the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector is using IoT to perform automated tasks. With better data analysis, they are better able to predict stuff like maintenance or when to turn the lights off in a manufacturing section. So IoT is really helping with this better data analysis, energy efficiency, and overall better production uptime. This is all enabled to the fact that IoT runs on edge computing architecture. Edge computing pushes the data away from a centralized server and out to the edge of the network where data is most generated and gathered. By putting all of the data processing on the edge, what this allows is for better speed in computer processing, because now the processing is happening on the same side as where the data is collected. This also allows for more flexibility. Now, IoT devices can connect to one another without having to use a centralized server. No longer do you need to go to a central server to process information from one endpoint to another. These endpoints can now talk to each other. This also allows for scalability because now we're offloading the data analysis to smart devices, and there is a lesser need for a big data center. And lastly, IoT allows for better reliability because now we're not constrained to having a central server doing all the data processing for big companies. So with all of these reasons, I hope I got everyone excited for IoT technology and the future for it. I will now pass it to Ben to discuss what NEXIS has been doing in Smart Lab and what we have done with IoT technology. He will also discuss our plans for our future semesters.
Thank you, Leah, for that fantastic introduction. I'm actually going to let Javier kind of talk a little bit about our vision of Smart Lab. And as we kind of mentioned, or I don't know if you guys have known, if you've been here for a couple semesters, this project actually started actually the fall a year ago. So this is our third semester having been running, and it's been running quite well. I mean, we've had to shift a little bit due to COVID, but you know, we're still trying to keep that same vision. So Javier, you want to take it over?
All right, so what is Smart Lab? What was the initial vision that we had when we started the project? So Smart Lab is a project that aims to create an interactive, productive, and more effective NEXIS workspace. Don't get us wrong, everyone in NEXIS absolutely adores being in the lab. It's a symbol of our organization, but it also feels a little outdated in a way, and this is what Team Smart Lab proposes to change. What we look to is to make a digitally enabled space that's reactive and optimized to fit the growing and diversifying requirements of the organization through collaboration with SEND faculty and other industry leaders. One of the prototypes we had, for example, last semester was our density prototype. This helped count the amount of members that came in and out of the lab, and it overall made it easier for our management staff to realize how many people were using the lab and what constraints that we have when it came to attendance or lab space or things like that. Of course, this prototype has been affected by COVID and how well, most people are not really going to the lab anymore because they just rather work on their own projects in their home. Of course, this doesn't mean that our project has just been in a stalemate. We decided to take this time to jump into an ideation process and research on which other technologies we can implement on our project. And we came to a conclusion that the two that we might like to focus on would be computer vision and RFID. And Ben will now take us on what we discovered.
Yes, so thanks, Javier. And as Javier mentioned, it's a lot of change, you know, whether or not feeling safe, you know, going into the lab or just wanting to limit their exposure. So definitely a switch of us putting the density stuff on the back burner as far as, you know, our plan was to kind of visualize that out and look at the data and find insights. Obviously, and then also it complicates things because we didn't get it, you know, with that one, we only had half a semester last semester, right? And then nobody over the summer and really not too many people this year. So we're kind of putting that on the back burner for a little bit, but something we'll definitely revisit in the future. And, you know, kind of just going off of all these other IoT devices too. And I know Professor Fudge mentioned it earlier today. We also had a project prototype working with Alexa. And the great thing about some of these prototypes is that just because we've kind of, you know, finished them for now, or at least in their finished state, there's always plans to build on them and kind of continue them in the future, or even, you know, as newer technologies come out, maybe expand on them. For example, with density, they've actually recently announced a new sensor that they're coming out with that's really cool, that allows you to 3D map the entire space, as opposed to just people entering. So I think, you know, and that just kind of goes to show what Leah mentioned as far as, you know, this ever expansion of IoT devices and this whole idea of a smart and interactive space. And actually even Martin touched on it. He was previously on our team, so he brought it into exploration. So it's a huge area. So, you know, as Javier mentioned, our future plans are to kind of take this, you know, knowledge we've learned about these different technologies and find areas where the NEXIS lab needs improvement. And that has also been somewhat of a challenge this semester. Like, for example, the other two prototypes we've had have kind of come off of Well, one, with the density stuff, like we needed a way to measure lab efficiency, right? That was one thing that we wanted to be able to measure from, I think, Josh and Chris prior, director, vice director, like, you want to be able to measure those metrics and see where we can improve. So, these ideas are coming off of things that we experienced personally while in the lab and that members have experienced. Other issues, and same thing with the Alexa prototype. That's where that came from, the idea of having custom coded questions to answer questions about Nexus. So that has been somewhat of a challenge, but I think it's good to take this time to kind of ideate, right? And that's kind of the process that we have in Nexus. And I think that's provided us with the ability to set us up for next semester to kind of go into diving into some more as far as, hands-on creation of minimal viable creations in the future and targeting areas. And as Javier mentioned, RFID and computer vision, these are just a couple areas as far as looking at, we have potential ideas of looking at Alexa, custom coded skills, things like that. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we can go next semester. And I think that's really exciting. And I think, as Leah mentioned, this is just an ever expanding field. So over the next course of a year or so, I mean, there's just going to be new things every semester. And that's really exciting to us. And I think another pertinent thing is, also looking at how can some of these prototypes help with some of the issues that we've had related to COVID-19, right? So, another thing kind of around this topic is what else can density do? Well, it can measure people in the room, and actually density as a whole is kind of, through COVID, has actually, they've done a really nice job of reacting to the situation in terms of like their marketing and their side of how this, how their sensor can be used. So essentially it just tracks anonymously, like how many people are in a room. So as you can probably tell, right, like we have a limit on how many people can be in Nexus. So how can we adapt some of these prototypes in the next semester? Because obviously COVID probably isn't going to go away, although we're seeing a lot of good stuff with vaccines and things. But I highly doubt it'll be gone in the next 2 months. So how can we react to that situation? So I appreciate you guys kind of listening to us today. And do you guys have any questions for us?
Great job, Ben. I actually do have a quick question. Outside of density, are there any other technology that you're interested in using in the upcoming semester for next semester?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Sean. And I think if anybody else on the team wants to answer too, anything that they're interested in, I think specific technologies, it's kind of hard. Like you mentioned, I mean, there is, I've been talking to you about it, but yeah, that new density sensor is really interesting and something that we've actually been talking about doing, like doesn't just map. I know you said other than density, but I'm going to go into these. But it doesn't just map like it's way different because it doesn't just map like how many people come into the room, but it also maps the space itself. So you can see like how many, like if there's somebody currently sitting at this desk, right? Which is really interesting. And if we can push that out as far as making that available on some basis to all Nexus members, they can see what spaces are available in the lab. And then I think the really interesting thing with this is you can actually collect this data over time and use this spatial data. And I think there's a lot of really cool visualizations you could do with that on the data side of things, as well as how can you ultimately improve the lab space, right? So that's definitely one that's like a little bit different than than density that's currently being implemented. And then also we're kind of talking about on the side of things of doing, we've talked about it for a bit, doing like RFID. We already actually have the technology in the lab, but doing like RFID with like almost like a sign-in system. And I actually think that, so like an attendance system in a way, but also I think in this time, that could be really interesting as far as how does this tackle the COVID issues? Well, let's be honest, we're not currently, I think the one thing in Nexus that we're just doing like a spreadsheet, right? So we're just doing a spreadsheet as far as like contact tracing and things like that. So doing something like this with RFID, I think would be really interesting. So that's another area and could kind of also help with COVID and just it's something we've wanted actually before COVID as well. So I think it could kind of tackle a couple issues. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything. Right, Sheila.
Yeah, I just had a question. This was another project near and dear to my heart because I think your guys' space is so important for a number of reasons. You're right next to the Dean Suite, and so it's a heavily trafficked area. So the cooler your stuff looks, like I love what the 3D team is doing, and I love the fact that you guys are exploring new and updated technologies to have in the lab to help make it more efficient. So the one that makes me most excited is the Alexa stuff. We had originally talked about when the lab is closed, but students may be going by, there being some kind of Alexa system set up on a screen outside the lab to answer questions. So especially during now when we don't have as many students, coming through, would be a great time to be developing this. But it's a recruitment thing too. So when Stephanie brings through the high school students and their parents coming past your space, which is so cool looking, and then maybe having some kind of a Alexa or some kind of a computer generated robotic kind of thing happening to interact with them would be giant. I think it'd be a huge draw to the iSchool, and it would really be a fun project to work on. So I'm just curious where you guys are with exploring that particular project. Have you made any motions with that at all?
Yeah, so actually, a little bit unfortunate on this, but we actually finished that prototype last semester, and then truthfully we kind of lost, like not really lost, but and it's really not that hard to get reset up. But essentially, what happened is that one of our SD cards, which had the code on it for our Pi, is somewhere in the lab. And then honestly, I haven't really been in the lab that much this semester. I've been kind of sticking online for just numerous reasons. So, and with us going home early last semester, we just haven't really had time to implement it. But I will say, here's my promise I'll make to you, Sheila, and everybody here as witness. It'll be up and running with a couple other things that I have in mind as far as digitizing the lab space and with these COVID restriction things. I anticipate it'll be up really early next semester, actually. Hoping to maybe get in and set a couple things up if possible over break, as I'm local in the area, so I'm always around.
Cool.
But
Thank you. I just wanted an update because I think that's going to be an important step for you guys to have some of that very visible things right there in the forefront. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it really will solve that issue of one, maybe some people don't know exactly what NEXIS is, but it's also just a really cool and interactive piece. And currently with that, we don't. I think I guess I mentioned expanding on Alexa skills. So the one thing is with that is it's just right now in audio. Essentially, you ask a question, right? It's just like normal Alexa, and it'll answer back in audio. So we've talked about how do we make this more inclusive as far as people with disabilities and things like that. So we've even talked about expanding on these Alexa skills to have specific questions, either play a video or something like that. So it has not only an audio portion, but also if there's somebody hard of hearing or something like that, we can have a visual component that goes along with it as well. So I think there's a lot of different areas too to expand on this, as I mentioned.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Thank you.
Great question. Any more questions for Smart Lab? All right. Excellent project. Great job, Team Smart Lab. And then finally, we have Bhavash and Tejas.
All right, sure. Yeah. So basically, our project involves forecasting the weekly sales for a retail store. So as we all know that forecasting is one of the most important problems that every business faces today. So essentially because it's very important to accurately predict the exact sales that every store is going to have over the coming weeks so that they can proactively stock up on the exact accurate amount of inventory so that they don't suffer from revenue loss or so that their profits are in line with what they are expecting to. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, yeah. So for successful store and inventory management, we know that it's crucial to uh, anticipate the upcoming demand and then stock up on products accordingly. So the solution for this problem, what we are proposing is we are planning on predicting the weekly sales for every store and department by using forecast models so that the stores will be able to proactively procure the required inventory. And this can be accomplished by accurately estimating the weekly sales for every department of every store. So the tools and technologies that we are going to use in order to implement this project of ours are we'll be using Jupyter notebooks to run our Python codes. And we are planning on using Tableau or Power BI dashboards to have powerful, effective visualizations that will help the user better understand the trends and patterns in the data. And then we'll also be using GitHub to collaborate amongst ourselves and have proper version controlling of our code. And lastly, we are also planning on using the AWS cloud platform to host our forecast model and deploy the solution on a cloud so that users will be able to access our front end website externally also. So currently, we are at a stage where we have found the right data set on Kaggle, and we have finished cleaning the data and handling all the data quality issues such as missing values and outliers. And we merged all the three files to create a single centralized data repository. Other than this, we have also finished performing univariate and bivariate exploratory data analysis to observe trends and patterns in our data. And we've observed a few interesting patterns on the effect that certain attributes have on our target variable, which is sales. Now Tejas is going to talk about our next steps.
Yeah, thank you, Bhavish. So, building on our exploratory data analysis, we plan to initially build the univariate and bivariate artificial neural network models. These neural network models are specially built for forecasting. So, we'll be using the traditional recurrent neural network models as well as the newly advanced recurrent neural network models. Those includes LSTM, which is long short-term memory networks, and GRU, and also we'll try to implement a CNN LSTM network, which is the combination of convolutional neural networks and recurrent neural networks. A new thing that we are trying to implement is ARIMA, which we haven't learned it yet, but we plan to learn it and implement it on this project. Next thing is, after we have a successful model of artificial neural network, and based on the exploratory data analysis observations, we plan to build Tableau and Power BI dashboards, which will have all the insightful visualizations from the data. And next thing is, we plan to generate a pickle file out of our neural network models, and then use that pickle file to build a front end dashboard that will help users to forecast the values for any week they want. So that's all from our side for today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great job, guys. This is a pretty interesting project. I have one quick question. I mean, do you kind of foresee any challenges, or have you faced any challenges in terms of the project?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
go ahead, Bhavish.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So far we haven't really faced a lot of challenges, but going forward, we foresee that deploying on cloud platform might be a challenging task for us, and also learning a new technique of ARIMA. The new forecasting technique of ARIMA might also be challenging for us. Yeah. Tejas, if you have anything to add on to that.
Adding to what Bhavish said, the challenges which we have faced till now. So when we downloaded the dataset, it had 3 CSV files. So it was a bit challenging task to integrate all those 3 CSV files into one and then do the exploratory data analysis and forecasting. That's all.
Yeah.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. Thank you all so much for joining us in our Fall 2020 Pitch Outs, and especially thank you to all the Nexus members who are passionate and dedicated to emerging technology in their projects. This semester was definitely unlike any we've seen so far, but all the projects and members were able to work around the challenges and still complete research on different projects and technologies, and expanding their skills on ideation and innovation. A little personal story, I remember joining Nexus my sophomore year, and I was super eager to get into the lab and play with the technology, and having the opportunity to be the director. Although for only one semester, as I graduate this semester, it's been a truly unremarkable, and it's leaving me speechless. This opportunity that I was able to be in the lab and transition to a director, and now I'm transitioning it to Ben, who will be the director next semester, and I'm super excited for what they're going to do, and them following them as well. It's definitely bittersweet to be graduating this semester, but I'm really confident that Ben and the team will lead Nexus forward. But our Nexus website is listed there, as well as if we have any interested members, interested iSchool or outside of the iSchool as well, for our spring 2021 applications. They are already open. So if you want to, apply, definitely do that. And if we have any faculty that are interested in getting involved, we're always looking for faculty mentors. Just, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But thank you all so much for joining. Do we have any general, inquiries, questions, or comments before we all log off here?
Nope, just a really nice job. Everybody did very well. This is really pretty cool stuff, and so excellent work.
Thank you.
Professor. Yeah, I think another interesting point too, Sean. I actually don't even know if we've mentioned this, but these actually aren't all of our projects, actually.
Right.
I don't know, John, exactly. I don't actually know the exact percentage. How do you know off the top of your head, roughly?
This is probably about half of our projects. A lot of there's reasons why we're only able to present around 11 today. A lot of students had different responsibilities going on. A lot of them are moving. Different coursework. Some had, I think, Whitman courses at Capstone today or something like that. So there was scheduling issues, and since it's the fall semester, a lot of projects are just kind of starting up. So kind of starting in a different climate like this, not many people had a lot of progress going, but I think next semester we'll definitely have an increase in terms of presentations in the projects. I think a lot of people have something like a solidified MVP to present on. But there's a lot of different projects we'll be looking forward to next semester as well, starting up, like deeper projects in AI, machine learning, even AR, MR are super exciting, and we'll get those going. We already have a really good faculty mentor out of the College of Engineering for an AI project, so we're super excited to get those going.
Yeah, this is Professor Wallace. I'm actually happy to help out with the machine learning and AI stuff too, if you need some help.
Yeah, of course. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, good.
All right. If there's no more final questions or comments, that concludes the NEXIS Fall 2020 Pitch Out. We'll send out the virtual version later on tonight with Bhavash's and Tejas's presentation attached. So hopefully they send that in early, and we'll be able to send that out. Send this out to everyone. But thank you all so much for joining in today. It was a really pleasant experience, and I hope you all learned a little bit more about what Nexus is doing in the iSchool.
That's right. Great job. So long, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you all. Have a great day.